For this video, we're going to take a little more time with the base. I talked a little bit about the material selection, a little bit about the naming, some of the missing items, and wherever you're putting this, whether it's in your documents, in a cloud drive, on a flash drive, keep these files separate. So the previous fast video, I named Assignment02 and I renamed it to -1. So I'm going to create a new folder, maybe. There we go. And I'll just call that 102. Now that gives me a place to locate these files. So, as mentioned, let's go ahead into the draw. And did in the previous video, the most efficient is going to be kind of this shape. Oh yeah, forgot the radius. So, if we use that one, I'll go back and correct for it. So we'll do that again. We'll do it a little bit slower with explanation, try and catch anything that I might have missed. And then another technique would be to draw this top and put as much of that geometry in, and then use the contours regions to extrude different parts of sharing that sketch. So I'll do that as a second. And a third way would be to draw it from the front and kind of the same thing. Use that sketch to and contours and regions and generate all of our geometry. So let's go ahead and fly this out of the way and keep the numbers handy. This is in metric, so we'll use our metric template. And again, if you want it to look like the drawing where the front plane is the front plane, but we're actually drawing in the right view. So let's fly that back in and I'll explain that a little bit better. So our 3-view drawing, our third angle projection is when this rotates back and is along this edge, we're looking at the right plane. And then this would be the front plane and this would be the top plane. So anything that I draw, if I put it in the right plane, then it will look in this orientation. Now, because the drawing doesn't care and the assembly really doesn't care, we can orient and move those around as we need. So it's not critical, but get into that mindset that you're looking ahead to the assembly or looking ahead to the drawing and what's going to make your life easier when you get to that point. All right, so went into the sketch on the right plane, and as is my habit, right click on the plane, and then you'll see the sketch in the upper left. It highlights, and now we're looking at the red origin. Reminder that the long leg is vertical, short leg is horizontal. So if we lose that reference, we can always take a quick glance at the origin. So we'll go into the line, and I will still kind of shift between, or I guess shift isn't a good word. I will still alternate between the L key and the S key and the command manager and the right mouse button so that you see those, but pick one that you're comfortable with and realize that the others are there. So for the height, I think I decided it was 40. So if I use the sketch input, sketch numeric input, and then we do have a dimension for the 30. And those are kind of where I want to sketch. So if I right click, I'll do the select and I'll just get those out of my way. All right, so it kind of put those in place. So if I hit L on the keyboard, that'll drop me into the line. This side is 8, and we'll bring it back and up. And when I bring it over, then I can put in the 10. So if you're doing the click, it'll be a little bit different, and that was a miss. I can see the little blue dot over here, and it didn't go fully defined. So I'm just going to drag that dot. If I left click and hold down at the end point of the line and bring it back to where it snaps to that coincident, then it'll go fully defined. So let's do a One more. We'll go back to the beginning. Hit the last view, so let's go Control 1. And now I'm going to do a click. Alright, so if I click, and I did Control 1. What I really needed was a Control 3 or 4 for the right plane or the left plane. Alright, so again, using that origin as my reference, long leg, short leg, I'm looking at it as I expect. Click, and we place it. This was the 40. Now this is going to bring off the next line. So 10, and it is in the horizontal because I have the yellow box with the horizontal. And down some distance, click. Over some distance, click. I'm looking for that blue inference line, so maybe we can see it a little bit better, maybe not. As we drag over, you'll see those inference lines, though, that are letting you know that you're pretty close, and we'll go 8. But since it didn't, I'll just go ahead and feed that in. I don't know if it'll go coincident, so I'll go ahead and try the 30, and then select or the escape to end. So we still have to do a little bit of adding relations and checking the dimension. So in this case, we'll go to coincident and tell the line to go to horizontal. All right, so same result, slightly different technique. And then we're going to extrude this out. It doesn't really matter which way it goes. So if I stay with the blind, if I go 160, if I go to the midpoint, we go to 160 and it stays centered. Those are really only the only two choices, and then within blind, does it go to the left or go to the right? And again, that doesn't really matter. So we'll go ahead and accept it. And then you can take your pick of do we want to do the sketch on the front, and we're going to stay with circles on this. So, or we could do the sketch on the in the top view. So if I go to my S key, then I go to the circle. If we go to the excuse me, circle on the command manager, or right click and sketch entities, circle. All three of those will get us to a circle. Right, and then those are 10 millimeters, so I'll put in the 10. On the other one, I'll leave it without, and then select, hold down the control button, select, and set those to equal. Now if there is a change, both of those will change. Usually when you make that decision, whatever this is mounting or the pins that are going in there, they're going to change consistently. If we do the engineering on it, find there's a load or I need to put a bearing or a bushing in there, they'll change to the same size. And worst case is I would come back over, identify the equal, and delete it, and place its own dimension. All right, so the height-wise and lengthwise, still making an assumption that this is at the center of the fillet when we put it in. And so 12 and 12, and this one will be 12 off the end. But it looks a little bit lower. I think I did 14 last time, so I'm going to go with 16 this time, see how that looks. All right, and then we're going to extrude cut. So we jump over into features, extrude the cut, and blind in condition, if I put a value in there, it would be like a spot face or a small indentation. So we want this to go through. We did through all, which says if there were multiple pieces, it would find the very last one, where up to next goes to the back of the part. So in this case, they both have the same effect. All right, so on the sketch, we'll go in, right click on the face, go into the sketch, it rotates into the view. Decided that these were 6 millimeters, so we just drop it in place, add the 6, and then we have a dimension of 19.4. And from the end of 7.96. All right, so because we have that dimension, our 140 would give us 10 on each end if this was symmetrical. So I'm always looking for that symmetry, and if there is a reason that this is offset, then we can kind of identify that and be aware of it. So if I pre-select, last time I didn't pre-select, so if I pre-select and do linear sketch pattern, the one that hides down here because my screen resolution is a little bit higher, shows arc 1. If I don't, let's go ahead and kick that out, clear it. If I go into linear sketch and nothing is selected, I will highlight that box, come over and grab the entities to patterns. So a lot of times I pre-select and I'm not even thinking about pre-selecting. It just becomes part of the habit because it's one less thing, typically one less thing that I have to worry about. So dimension the X spacing is preferable. So let's go ahead and do that first, and we'll look at the elements that it generates. And we're doing a number of instances as opposed to the number of spaces. So that's pretty important because there are settings in AutoCAD that will generate how many spaces that you're going to end up with, as opposed to how many total circles. Right, so we go ahead and hit OK. And when this goes in, we have a center line. We have the number of instances, and I can change that. Just a double click, hit 6, and it becomes 6. Go back to 8. And same with the 20 millimeter, we can adjust that as needed. And we'll end up with our geometry. So if I undo that, and if you've worked to this point or you're following along, go ahead and leave this. This is just an example of what happens when you don't turn on the dimension X spacing. So we still need 8 and 20. And there are going to be times where the sketch that it generates, the geometry, so it is tying it linear, but it doesn't have the dimension. Occasionally this will rotate, and if it rotates, I'm going to pick the 2 center points and make those horizontal. So it's not showing that, but so sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. The linear sketch pattern and the circular sketch pattern are fairly consistent, but sometimes they do give weird results. All right, so same basic result, but no center line. I could have drawn the center line and made it the length, and it would have had looked more similar. But we'll go into the extrude cut. It's already set up to next because that's what I used last time. We go ahead and accept it, and you can pick whatever name you want to put on. So last time I just rough positioned the sketch. If I want to control that a little bit more, then I'm going to go into line, make it for construction. And if I want this text to be centered, I'm just going edge to edge. And we'll go 20 millimeters. And then if I pre-select the line and go into the text, it will act as the curve. So the reason that we have the curves is that this was an arc, which is always interesting. So maybe we'll drop that in afterwards. And if I put my information, notice it's still pretty small over here. So let's change to the document font. There are several single point fonts. So if this is going to machine, I really don't want to run this as a pocket. It's a lot of toolpaths. It takes a long time. And unless you really need whatever font, then it's not really going to help you out with anything. So always have to find it. So there are a couple. Okay, I may not have loaded there. I think maybe that's it. Simple Sans OC. Well, we'll see. Anyway, I had to go find this and install it on the computer. So just to give you an idea, then we will center that. And like I said, this is just a single point. So when I put this in the machine, I'm going to take a tool with a point and just have it follow those paths, and it'll be very straightforward, very simple text. So that helps the manufacturing side out, not to have to do all of the crazy in the tool paths. Probably not going to be able to make it into all of those nooks and crannies anyway. So let's go back to a regular font, and I'll leave that one. I'm hoping to get the. Oh, I jumped into the sketch. So center line this time. Go from end to end, looking for the coincidence and the horizontal. And if I wanted to offset or change it, I could. Oh, I needed to pick that. I could make the line shorter and then position it somewhere in that mix. All right, so we'll go back into the font. If we stay with the Century Gothic, make it 20 millimeters, a little bit too big. All right, it needs to fit in. And then we go back and, well, actually I should make it smaller so we can do the arc example. Okay, then that gives me something that I can extrude. If we go into, let's do a 3-point arc because I think I'll have probably the best control over it. So kind of, well, we'll make it tangent. And the lines don't really participate in a lot of these, but still want to have the construction. And the center is out here somewhere. Oh, I should have selected the midpoint first. Control select the center of the arc, and then we can make that vertical to the lower edge. All right, so if I go back into my text, double click on it, instead of the line, we'll pick the arc, maybe. Now it's positioning it, there we go. And we'll stretch it out a little bit. Now the other justifications are to flip it, depending on which face, which way you're looking at it. You can get the different results. It is centered, and then the text width, and then the spacing width. So I can adjust those. If I go 200%, then it will stretch it out. All right, so whatever looks good, we'll go ahead and accept it. And features, extrude cut. We don't want to get too crazy on the depth. This is usually going to be a small tool. If I cut the pocket, it's going to be a small tool. Also mentioned that anything like the A is going to have a solid, a separate body if it goes all the way through. So if we go 0.2 millimeters, that will be plenty. And then as a general rule, we'll put in the fillets and the chamfers at the end because they vary and can cause additional problems. So again, with the pop-up, looking at what we could use, all of the edges, everything. So it still didn't find what I was looking for in that mix. So we're just going to go select the 4 edges. And this is going to end up being 12 millimeters. We'll go ahead and accept it. And that gives us our part. So this will be Control S. When we go into whether it's the documents, assignments, we're going to navigate back. We'll give it the base and save. So getting used to file management and organizing these, you don't want everything that you create ending up in the same folder and having problems with the naming. So let's do the other example, and I'll do this one a little quicker. So if you've worked this far and are happy with your result, this is a watch. If you want to try it, then this will give you an alternative method to work with. So this time I'll go in the top plane because I want to draw the shape. I still forgot that fillet. All right, so 30 millimeters and missed that one, but that's okay. We'll just drop the dimension in. 160. And I need a line that is 10 millimeters off of the edge. So we're building more into this sketch. We're doing a little more work up front. We're going to get more geometry from it, but it doesn't necessarily make it a better method. There are going to be times where we get too much information in here and it's really not helping us. So you want to make sure that your sketches are manageable and that you can easily modify, recognize, and think in terms of the dodecahedron. Do you really want to go in and have to decipher through all of that information to make a simple change? All right, so I'm just going right back through the process. Oh, I guess I was in inches. All right, so good example. So this thing is huge. So good example. So let's stay with the 20 because 20 millimeters is going to be way too small. And I did 7, we want 8. All right, so we'll do the display, we'll dimension the X and hit OK. So I realize that I'm in inch, pounds, and seconds, and I want to switch over to millimeters, grams, and seconds. So watch what happens. It kicks me out of the sketch. Edit the sketch, and I'm at 4,000. I'm at 4 meters. It's pretty big. All right, so I can't really just scale this. We have the scale entities. So if I grab this, I'm in the lasso selection too. And it doesn't, I was going crossing, so, all right, I think I got everything. So 25.4, we want to, 25.4 is going to make it even bigger. So let's go to the opposite is 0.03937 is the, and there's a 0008 or something out there, so it makes a small, in most cases, a small change. And nothing really happened because I have all of these dimensions. All right, so it did try, and I'll place that back there. I should have selected that as my sketch point. So this is where we can look at the display delete relations. And unfortunately, I have to get rid of all of these dimensions. So delete, watch out for delete all because it does remove everything. Instance count can stay, and we will scale. All right, so there are 39.37 inches in a meter. Divide that by 1,000, we have 0.03937. If we do 1 divided by, then we'll end up with the 25.40008. And let's see if that scales it down. All right, so we want to zoom to fit, which should be F on the keyboard. It's sort of held on to everything that was there. All right, so the downside then is I have to go back and redo my dimensions. So there's my slight mismatch, 99968. And that can certainly be an issue. 999998. All right, because we didn't do exactly the conversion. So we're going to see that 60 micro pico units that difference in our geometry. All right, so what else am I missing here? But all of these numbers are coming out close enough that in machine tolerances, I'm not overly concerned with it. And we can get these put back in relatively easy to make the correction. The best thing though is just to go ahead and try to catch all that to begin with. All right, so my diagnostic tool, what is able to move. So I have one more dimension. We're going to make that 6 millimeters. All right, now we can get on to the business of extruding this out. So the extrude boss base, I want to go 8 millimeters on this one. The selected contours or regions, so if I just did contour, so let's get out of that for a second. If I did contour, it would be this outside and it would be a solid block. If I picked one of the circles, it would just be the cylinder. So let's go ahead and delete those out. But if I use the regions, then the region is the interior space and it will give me that shape. All right, and then the advantage of the region and putting in that extra geometry is I can go right back to that sketch, do an extrude. This one we've been using 40, and again, since it's not listed, you can put whatever you want in there. And I'm going to go look for that region, and it's going to extend it out 40. We have the two sketches. Now let's do this. Let's just right click and sketch. Probably need to customize my S key at some point. If I jump into the sketch entities, we're going to go circle. And I got the click in there, so these were 10. And select, control, select again. Set those to equal. We'll do the 12 and the 12. Now if I had drawn from this front and I had put the fillets in, I could go ahead and just make that at the center of the fillet. But if the fillet changes sizes, it also shifts that that position. So let's go 18 on this one just to be different. All right, and we're going to extrude cut. I think we've done everything we really need to do with the engraving. So most of the time engraving is going to be like part numbers or something along those lines. And come up here to find the fillet. And we've already determined that the selection tool is not going to find everything. So we'll put in the 12 millimeters. And I don't want to forget the 3 millimeters this time. So 3, and it will show the preview. Are we thinking, oh, right now it's set to no preview. So if we do a partial preview, that'll give us the lines. But something like the, if it stayed at 10 or 12, would show us that it's going to have that intersection. And part of the problem here is we would maybe lose some of that that hole geometry depending on how we drew this. So you always want to check and make sure that the hole is complete if you have that level of intersection. And then we'll go to 3 and save it, and then I'll go back to the other one and finish it out. So all right, so a couple options and different ways to approach the base. You can pick whichever one you prefer, and that'll get us over into the follower and the coupler.